Lisa, in trying to apply philosophy of biology thinking to different areas of biology, sex, and gender obviously are hot issues today in a very politicized sense. But let's go back to some of your work in sexology, which you did as a almost sociological and psychological research, but you're a philosopher of biology as well. So I want you to combine the two and look at the work that you did in sexology research from a philosopher's point of view.
Right. So, just to be clear, the work I did in sexology, one was with a neuroscientist to do a statistical analysis, and two were with sexologists to write a survey and do survey analysis and interpretation. And one was to write another survey and do also survey analysis. So,
Okay.
so that type of work is actually very philosophical and conceptual because you're designing the type of knowledge that you want to get, and you have to be very strategic
Right.
about designing in order to elicit the information that you want to get. It's very hard to write a survey.
Right.
I until I was involved in doing it, I had no idea how hard it was to write a survey. It seems like you just ask questions. No, that's not it
right.
at all.
You can create any answer you want by
Yeah.
asking certain kinds of questions.
Yeah,
for sure.
and that was my complaint actually in my book, was that no one seemed to have asked, except for actually one or two researchers seems to have ever asked the question. They only asked, do you have orgasm when you have vaginal intercourse, to women? And to men, does your does your female partner have an orgasm when you have vaginal intercourse? That was the question. And this is not sufficient, because we needed to know how women have orgasm, the techniques that women use to have orgasm with vaginal intercourse, because it turns out that if you use no hands and no vibrator at the same time as intercourse, the rate of women having orgasms, we now know, thanks to research that was done in reaction to my probing, or shaming, I should say, of this the community, that research shows that it's between 4 and 15% of women who have reliable orgasm with intercourse, no hands, no vibrator. But if you add direct clitoral stimulation to that with hands or vibrator, the number goes up to over 90%.
Wow.
Okay? So it really makes a difference how you ask the question, right? Now, what I asked in my book was, I want to know what women were thinking when they answered that question. Do you have orgasm when you have vaginal intercourse? What question were they answering? The hands one, the no hands one, the sometimes yes and no one. What did they have in their minds when they answered that question? Because otherwise we have no idea how to read that.
Especially with that kind of variation, which is enormous.
Exactly. Turns out one of the papers investigated this very thing, was whether women's answers depended on how they interpreted the question. Yes, they did, and their answers were very different depending on how they interpreted it. And what that means is that all of the research that I summarized in my book, all 37 studies that I did an informal meta-analysis on in my book, to say, it looks like the orgasm rate with intercourse is about 25%. That all of those studies are garbage. We don't know what the answers are, because we've shown, at least preliminarily and fairly convincingly, that women answered those surveys
in radically
willy-nilly.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no idea what they were thinking.
Yeah. Also, how do you have the controls there? Because people who respond to surveys may be a self-selected group
Yeah,
of the population that skews the answer because it's an embarrassing question, even if it's anonymous. It's still personally embarrassing or
There are shortcomings to all sex surveys. There are shortcomings to all online surveys. There are shortcomings to all in-person surveys. There are shortcomings to all surveys.
Sure, yeah.
And all of those things have to be taken into account and sort of mediated for.
But you're confident that your results reflect the general population as opposed to a self-selected group or deselected group?
But I'm confident that our population, even if it's self-selected to be women who feel comfortable talking about their sexuality, the spread that we got in that group
That's interesting. Yeah.
was so significant.
Even people who were comfortable talking about
right.
it. So theoretically, people who are not comfortable would even have a larger spread. I mean, conceptually.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that's
I am
interesting.
confident.
That's
I
interesting.
am confident, and what it shows is that my calculations are worthless.
By the way, give the name of this famous book. You haven't said the name.
Oh, sorry. So I published a book in 2005 called The Case of the Female Orgasm, Bias in the Science of Evolution.
Okay, so that's the famous title. And
Yeah.
that got you a lot of publicity.
It did. Yes, it did.
Wanted or unwanted,
Yeah.
you got it. So one of the interesting things that I found is that women reported, self-reported of this self-selected group, and then you had the men do their impression, and you got a different number, right?
Well, that's a very reliable result, it turns out. Basically, every survey that's been done that asks the women, how often did you come, and the men, how often did your partner come, is usually, it varies. Sometimes it's only 10%, but usually it's more like 20 or 25 or 30% higher estimation of how often the women had orgasm.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
it's always there.
and what's the interpretation of that? Men think they're better than they really are.
Well, I would prefer to be more generous than that. I would say it's hard to tell.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay, it's nice to see you generous.
Well, I think we should be generous in bed. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.